So I have the honorable position to be the last speaker of today. I feel that the world has been saved in many ways already today, so I'm not sure if I have anything to add to that. But I do want to say a few things about the process of innovation and how I feel you can sort of foster other like civic innovators and artistic innovators to be part of that process. And I think Halifax is in a crucial position to have lots of creatives here, and it's about I think it's only like the momentum to start attaching them to the process of placemaking that are happening here already. So I'm very honored to be here. So as said, I'm part of the STIPO team. Hans has been presenting earlier today. So we're an interdisciplinary team for urban development, trying to tap into the financial and organizational mechanisms to create better places and sustainable transformations and newly built areas around Amsterdam and around the Netherlands and the rest of the world. So we do that by focusing much on the human skill principles in urban design. So that's where I want to look at our current innovation districts in the city of Amsterdam, that if you ask me are not really places that I want to be at. Whatever world-leading innovation happens between those four walls, these are not the places that inspire me as an Amsterdammer, and also not places that would inspire you as Haligonians, I suspect. They're simply not places you want to stay, and they may generate jobs and are great for the city's economy and the R&D sector, but they do not add any value to the urban environment and its neighbors. So we really need to think about the kind of cities we are creating with this narrow-minded view of what innovation is, and I think two of the speakers right before me have that same idea of widening up the idea of innovation. Because our understanding of innovation should not be guided by quantities of patents alone. Because once you start adopting a wider definition of innovation, Amsterdam is actually full of places where you see and feel and interact with innovation. So I will take you along a few of the examples that I brought for you today. So this is the Keuvel, which used to be a polluted, derelict brownfield that is now today a creative hub for circular economy, and a clean tech playground for an amazing sustainability consultancy called Metabolic. They took old houseboats that were in the water of Amsterdam, and they put them on shore and allowed for artists and creatives to create their studios there. And in the meantime, that landscaping agency, they planted this grass, a type of grass that is actually in the 10 years of this temporary project, rinsing out the pollution from the soil of the brownfield, which is an amazing experiment. And these are actually places that people do want to be at. What is interesting, as I said, a clean tech playground for this consultancy and for the people that are involved in this project, they now get to transport these innovations into a bigger scale project, which is an actual floating neighborhood, one of the first self-sufficient floating neighborhoods in Europe that they're now creating. And this is very close to it in the north of Amsterdam, one of the warehouses that used to be a ship wharf, that is now an actual art city where artists were able to create their studios in a framework that was actually provided by some of the art funds in the city. And today, MX3D is printing the first metal bridge that will soon to be placed in the notorious red light district of Amsterdam. And this place is surrounded by, for example, this urban beach where you would run into these wonderful creative creatures. She's actually a good friend of mine. And so this is the way to activate the waterfront nowadays in the city of Amsterdam. And in my previous capacity, I had the pleasure to work for and help shape this organization, Pakhuis de Zwijger in Amsterdam, which is a former warehouse on the waterfront that has been refurbished into the platform for the creative industries and social innovation in urban development, where in over 600 events yearly, almost all of them are for free, everybody is involved in talking about the issues of the city of tomorrow. And they're also great placemakers. So this was actually an image of the placemaking week that we organized together with Project for Public Spaces and STIPO and many others in the city. And this takes me to one of the intriguing research projects by Wagner and Katz on innovation districts. They found that actually by studying different innovation districts around the world, it's no longer those eerie garage boxes in Silicon Valley where the most beautiful innovations emerge, but it's actually the inner city, very connected places where it's a combination of economic assets, physical assets, and most of all networking assets, where people are actually, they want to stay and they want to innovate. And in order for people to cross-fertilize and inspire each other, they actually need to meet. And for that, they need places. So this is much of the orgware that Hans earlier had been talking about as well. Like, how do you organize these networks that are a vital part of innovation and the innovation ecosystem happening? And who are the best to be helping to shape those places than placemakers and city makers and co-creators and curators and creatives in the city? And for all of you who now think, oh, you must be in a very, very successful and happy situation in the city of Amsterdam, this must have always been like that. No, it wasn't. So we had our little spur of modernism in the city of Amsterdam, and in the 1960s we were very close to central parts of the city being demolished to have an intersection and a highway running through the city like this. And I think for people in Halifax this may seem a little bit familiar. Luckily this was prevented by activists, so I think we're very happy throughout the 1970s and 1980s in Amsterdam we had a very strong activist movement preventing a metro being run through the, there is a metro now, but it was supposed to run through the inner core of the city and demolish lots of historic buildings, and this was prevented by activists. For those of you who think we have a great cycling infrastructure, this was a tremendous amount of work, 40 years of first activism, then collaborative governance to actually create this, and this is one of the images of activists in a, I just learned from Bianca, a die-in that is now being repeated over the world. And then these are some of the heritage buildings being prevented from demolishment by activists protecting the heritage with their own lives. This is actually the building that became Pakhuis de Zwijger, so we're very, very thankful for the activists to be protecting it this way. So nowadays there's no question whether the city of Amsterdam, I would say, values the role of creatives and artists in city making. So what this presentation is actually meant to show you is that it's not like only the grassroots initiatives that are coming up from bottom up, but it's actually a collaborative process of city making and a lot of political will to actually make this happen. So this is, I'm just showing a few examples. I don't have time for all of it, but this is one of the policies that is fostering these things from happening, which is the creative hub policy, broedplaatsbeleid. Don't try to pronounce that. But it's a very passionate team of 7 civil servants unlocking real estate, underutilized government buildings, and transform them into creative hubs and artistic spaces for subsidized rents for artists throughout the 15 years it has been existing. And many great innovations came from it. So the 3D printed bridge that I'm showcasing, they started in a creative hub like this. Some of the bigger fashion designers, they started in a hub like this. This is an example of an underutilized shell building. They left it on the waterfront of Amsterdam, and this is now a very applied creative hub for artificial intelligence and robotics, but centered around the urban challenges and how it could be applied. And to show you like this, all of these efforts, they have been paying off, because the city of Amsterdam in 2016 has been chosen the capital of innovation of Europe, which was not on the basis of one big scale technological innovation, but actually more on the innovation ecosystem and the way it fosters all of these different stakeholders to work together on urban challenges. And you see many economic boards, including the Amsterdam Economic Board previously, saying that innovation is a derivative of knowledge institutes, big corporates, and the local government working together. And we advocated in Amsterdam with a lot of passionate people that this should actually be a double triple helix and include civic initiatives and societal organizations and housing corporations and local businesses, startups, and SMEs to be included in this process, and it then leads to innovations that are much more, because they emerge from the local reality and they emerge from the needs in the city. They are much more adaptive to what we need in our cities, and not one size fits all big technological smart city solutions that we tend to see nowadays. So for those of you who want to see this urban innovation ecosystem in Amsterdam in practice, the Capital of Europe award has been transformed in a We Make the City festival that actually includes all these stakeholders in the city. And the second edition will be on in June 2019, so you're all invited to come look at it. And for those of you who know a bit of the role of creatives in city making, that you must be aware of this being a very fragile thing. So you often see that artists and creatives are mostly seen as an instrument in rising real estate prices and fostering the local economy to be successful. So this is actually something with STIPO we're trying to counter, or we're trying to look into those financial mechanisms to be put in place to actually make this into a more sustainable movement. And some of the things that we're trying now is we have an experiment running with the city of Amsterdam that in tender procedures, to compel project developers to designate 20% to 30% of the ground floor spaces. Hans has already advocated for the importance of the eye-level perspective, to keep them affordable for creative functions and artistic innovations to be happening there. And soon we will also launch an experiment with the first Dutch City Makers Fund that will help with access to funding and capacity building in the business model creation for creative and social and sustainable initiatives, because we tend to see that, especially for banks and in terms of risks, it's very difficult for them to finance these kind of small scale, with not so long of a track record kind of initiatives, creatives. So this is really something that we are passionate about to be launching very soon. And of course, like moments like these are very important. So this is also what we are working on with the International City at Eye Level network and our network of public developers, the recreators, and the recently launched European Placemaking Network that was a direct result of the Global Placemaking Week in Amsterdam. So yeah, if you're willing, become part of these networks, and we hope to exchange some ideas and strategies with you, because for us, after all, the art of city building is a co-creation. So thank you.